A beautiful transformation happens once a year in colonial Williamsburg. It is the Christmas season, and the streets of the historic area are lined with homes, shops, and taverns, all decorated with natural materials. Wreaths, swags, and garlands are embellished with fresh fruits, greens, berries, dried pods, and cones. Few spaces are left untouched, and the smallest details are carefully planned. During this celebration of Christmas, the natural charm of colonial Williamsburg is enhanced by these festive holiday arrangements. You can celebrate this time-honored tradition by creating these same decorations, by using simple techniques, lots of imagination, and a few tricks of the trade. Anyone who loves the holidays can bring Christmas to their home in the Williamsburg style. Before the season begins in early December, colonial Williamsburg designers, landscape staff, and carpenters spend countless hours and energy preparing historic area buildings for visitors to enjoy each year. Starting in the early morning hours, carpenters and designers make every effort to decorate over 50 buildings using modern and traditional techniques, each with their own individual design.
I'm out there looking at it and explaining it. Those are gorgeous. Really red and sort of...
Many arrangements get their start here at the colonial Williamsburg Flower House. Fresh fruits and other natural materials are carefully chosen, then placed to enhance the beauty of the colonial capital during the holidays. Libbey Oliver, manager of floral services for colonial Williamsburg, carefully oversees each decoration as it's placed throughout the historic area. Author of Colonial Williamsburg Decorates for Christmas, she teaches special workshops, writes articles for many garden and horticultural magazines, and is often invited to decorate and appear on the sets seen on national television. Using her expertise and simple step-by-step directions, it's easy to create some of these same decorations for your home, too. A thick, full wreath is recommended as a base for wiring fruit and materials. You can purchase a double-faced wreath with a wide frame running through the center. If a double-faced wreath is hard to find, then purchase two single-faced wreaths. Wire the two wreaths together. Remember, the stronger and fuller the wreath, the more fruit you can attach, and of course, the more fun you will have creating your holiday door. Now, let's get started.
Wreaths are one of the decorations that I think are most associated with Christmas for all of us. And wreaths, like many of the decorations that are associated with the colonial style of decorating, are so simple to make. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing which materials to select and some of the mechanics to work with, but it can be such fun, and all of the fresh fruit and the greens are readily available, either right in your own garden or perhaps in the produce department at your local grocery store. I'm going to make a wreath that has lots of different fruit on it. Oranges are going to be one of the key ingredients, and I'm probably going to place them across from each other on this one, and then come along with some apples on opposite sides here, and then fill in between. Since these are the major pieces of fruit that I will be designing with, I want to get them on the wreath first, and I want to make sure that they're right across from each other, and they help me make a very symmetrical wreath. I'm going to use florist wire to accomplish this, and it comes cut in 18-inch lengths, such as this. The wire comes in different gauges or weights, and I use this particular piece is an 18 gauge, and it also comes in a very thin weight, which you sometimes might need a 22 gauge. 22 is the thinnest, then 18, which I'm using, and then a 16 would probably be about the heaviest weight that you would need for large pieces of fruit. The U shape that I made with the wire then can go through the greens and through the wire frame, come out at the other end, the little legs, with lots of greenery between them. And then I'll hold that orange firmly in place so that I don't pull the wire through it, twist the wire back into the frame, and then tuck those little sharp ends back into the frame so that it doesn't stick me or a door. Yeah. I'll continue to use this same technique to wire another orange on. You see, it's stiff enough that it goes through very easily. Make it about even length as I go through. Bend it and keep right on going. I do need to make sure I'm looking at this carefully at this point, because the rest of the wreath will depend on how well I line these key pieces up. And bring the wire around the back and wire it in. Sometimes it's tempting to take a shortcut and not wire the fruit on so securely, or use some other method to make it hang in there. But the wire is very important so that you can keep the design intact. And I'll continue using the wire on all the fruit that I put on this wreath. As I mentioned, I'm going to place these apples next. In deciding the design, I need to pay attention all the time to what I'm doing. Both of these apples have nice stems on them, so I'd probably want to place them with the stems showing, but also might decide the back, the blossom end, is attractive too, but I don't want to make a mistake and put one on one way and one on the other. This is the sort of thing that takes away from a pretty design. Probably the easiest thing to do at this point is put this one aside and pick up a wreath where I have placed all of the other fruit on, except for just a couple that are missing. As you see, I've got the design with the lemons, one more to put on there, one more of the small lady apples goes right here. Let's add those and see how this is looking at this point. You don't have to have as much fruit as I've put on this wreath. You could do the design with just the top and the bottom part of it, or with all apples. Your imagination starts taking over once you look at the fruit and think about the architecture, color of your own house, what works best for you. I particularly like lemons because they show up so well, but they can also be a problem if you have weather that changes a lot on you, and if they freeze and thaw very often, they're going to be the first fruit to show that thawing, and they'll look a little brown. So you don't want to put too many on if you anticipate that being a problem for you. The lady apple, which is a very nice, long-keeping little apple, is very decorative, as you can see, and adds a lot to any decoration, whether it be a wreath such as this one or just a bowl of fruit. Yes. And even though that's a small apple, I still like to have it attached securely with this wire. Yeah. Is that, I hope, looks like we have all of the the fruit lined up like I was talking about. I can adjust it if I need to. But the next thing I do want to do to really bring out all the fruit is to add some holly berries. And I have a basket full of berries which have had the foliage clipped off of it so that the berries are exposed and show up quite well. And then we'll set off all of this pretty fruit and make it look so festive and brighten up any home, whether it be a colonial home or even a modern home. You'll find that this is a nice decoration for your holiday season.
To make this colorful wreath, you will need 1 double-faced balsam wreath or 2 single-faced wired, 2 red delicious apples, 2 oranges, 4 lemons, 12 lady apples, number 18 gauge florist wire, holly berries, and assorted floral picks. Conditioning your plant materials as soon as you cut or purchase them will result in long-lasting, fresh decorations. When you receive your greens or flowers, make a fresh diagonal cut on the stems and strip off the lower leaves. Soak the stems in warm water and a floral preservative overnight. Stripping the lower leaves will help keep your water clean, prevent bacteria buildup, and extend the life of your plant material. The magnificent Carter's Grove Mansion, located outside the historic area, is the setting for more holiday decorations created by Sue Rountree, the author of Christmas Decorations from Williamsburg. She presents workshops demonstrating a variety of traditional decorating. She's an avid conservationist and enjoys using materials that are plentiful in her area, always aware of the state's endangered species list.
A candle adapter is a wonderfully easy thing to use. It's great to have on hand because you can use it any time of the year. But particularly at Christmas time when there's a lot else going on, it's an easy thing to do with just some few greens and berries from your yard. It's a plastic holder. It has a small band around the bottom which you just insert into the holder and press it down until it's secure. Then you take a wet block of floral foam, and you can cut this out of a larger block of floral foam if you want. And I would recommend first soaking the floral foam in some kind of a floral preservative that you might find at your local florist. These forms can be a little bit difficult to find, but usually you can find them between your local florist or your local craft shop, something like that. But they're a wonderful thing to have. Then you can have this little taper holder that you can put into the center, and you'll see you can do it either for candles or without candles. What you really want to do with your hemlock is try and find some pieces that have a nice line to it. You don't need very much. We're going to try and cover up the edge of this holder. We're stripping off the bottom pieces, and we're going to insert it so that your hemlock is falling down, and that will give a nice graceful line to it. So these pieces you can just insert all the way around your holder, and you don't ever want to put any leaves or needles, anything like that, into the foam, because that does tend to have a buildup of bacteria or just make a larger hole, and it's a little difficult to work with, and it's so easy just to trim off those last few pieces. All right. Now we're just going to go right around the holder, and if you do have any pieces that don't seem to want to curve down, you can very often just try and bend those a little bit with your hands. And then if you get a piece that turns sideways, just take it out and reinsert it, and that will be fine. Then we'll use next some pittosporum. This is a great piece of plant material to use because it has this wonderful big front area that will help cover up your form. Also, you can use several layers of it. I'll show you what I mean. If you clip off the top here and then clip off this next one, you're just going to use short stems. And then if you clip off in here, you can see that you actually have another one that you can use. And very often you can go all the way down the piece of material, so that one stem, one piece of the pittosporum will yield a number of pieces of material that you can use. Okay, we're just going to push this in around the edge. And you see how nicely this will cover this area. And I think the variegated foliage is wonderful at Christmas time. Somehow it seems grand. When we combine it with the berries, I think you'll see that it's very pretty. Then we're going to put some, you want to cover up your candle holder as well. So just insert some more of these. Now, whatever kind of an arrangement you're doing, you always want to think of using a variety of plant materials. And we're going to use a little boxwood, and this will help us to get that variety as well as giving a little different texture. And when you pick your boxwood, you'll find that there are little segments in it that naturally break down into smaller, thicker little pieces, and you can just make a whole pile of those and then just insert those here and there. This also tends to give a little variation in the depth, as well as to make sure that you're hiding your, we'll call them mechanics. That's the actual holder that you're using. Any kind of device we usually call the mechanics. Now you see we're getting the feeling of sort of a graceful look, and we're using a variety of material, all easily found. It's also not a bad idea to trade plant materials with some of your friends, so that if you can have a wider assortment of plant materials, sometimes that's a good way to do it. Okay. Now we've got, this is just very quickly in general, I'm going to use some nandina berries, and these are wonderful. They're so colorful. They're marvelous to use in all sorts of Christmas decorations. The birds love it, so it's a grand plant to have. It also has wonderful foliage, sort of a reddish foliage in the wintertime. So we'll just cut off a few pieces of that. I don't want to use huge amounts of it, so we'll just take some and snip off. Oops, let's see here. We'll just snip off these small pieces like this, and then we'll just tuck them. That will go right into the foam. And you can take off some of these. I think that's really quite a bit of red to go in a concentrated area, so I'm just going to cut off some of these side pieces, and then I'm going to tuck these smaller pieces in. And just scatter those around a little bit. And I think all of a sudden the combination of the variegated foliage and the nandina berries and the boxwood looks wonderful. Let's put the candle in. You can see the general idea of what it would look like if you did not have a candle in it. You may prefer to do it that way, but this goes right into the center. Make sure you get it straight. Then another thing that's fun to use are some little pine cones. These are some small cedar pine cones, and you can wire them either singly or individually. And let's do one of those. It's very simple to do the wiring. You just want to take the cone and make a small J in the wire, just a small J, and push that under one of these little bottom parts of the cone. And put your finger there, and then just twirl the wire around the bottom so it catches under some of these little pieces, and then that's all there is to it. And then you can cut your wire at whatever length you want. So let's add a few of these. And as I say, you can choose other cones. I have, here's a slightly larger hemlock cone. And then maybe we could do some cinnamon sticks. The cinnamon sticks we can do with a pick. This is a little wooden pick. And let me take a piece of wire here. A small pick, and if you want to cut, you can use a larger wooden pick and then just cut off some of it. I'll show you how to do that. But just hold your pick against your cinnamon stick and then wind the wire around tightly so that it holds the cinnamon stick securely, and then just push it in and it won't show. We'll add a couple of these. Won't show the wires. And if you feel it is sticking up a little too far, just put a little piece of boxwood in front of it, and that will hide that. So we'll add a few more cones. Maybe another cinnamon stick back here. And then always when you finish, sort of rotate your arrangement and see if you want to make any changes. You may want to add a few more berries here and there, but basically you can see how quick it is to do, and it's really a very festive and nice arrangement.
Materials needed to make this candlestick arrangement are 1 candlestick, 1 candlestick adapter with wet floral foam, hemlock, variegated pittosporum, boxwood, nandina berries, wired hemlock cones, small cinnamon sticks, and small floral picks. Remember that some of these materials may not be available in your area. Any substitution of fresh greens that creates the same effect is acceptable. Floral cages are recommended for creating swags. The floral foam absorbs a great amount of water, keeping the materials fresh. Cages come in several sizes with a removable top for replacing the foam. It's a good idea to reinforce the cage with wire. Insert narrow floral wire through the foam. Twist and attach on the side. Tuck the ends back into the foam. You will be surprised how much material can be placed into one cage.
I want to use this one to make a decoration that will have lots of different materials on it. It's very easy to make a asymmetrical decoration on it. The decoration can be, as I'm going to do vertical. You might do one that would be horizontal. It can go in lots of different locations. What I want to place on this, I'm going to use a pineapple. The pineapple, since it's very large and heavy, I want to place it on first. And the pineapple I selected because it has such a nice small base, which is hard to find sometimes. And it has one side that's particularly nice. I can't say as much for the back side, but that won't matter as much. I want to use the front side of it. And I want to eliminate a little bit of weight and also give it a flat back to attach to my cage. So I will do this by using a very sharp knife. And if I use a sharp knife, it'll be very easy to do. I want to take maybe about 1/3 of the pineapple off. And I'll start at the base and work my way up toward the foliage, but not quite into it. And I've tried to select a pineapple that was not as ripe as it might be if I were selecting to eat it. This one looks pretty good, though. It's a little juicy, and in order to take care of that, I'm going to put a paper towel on it just for a moment to soak up a little bit of the juice. That really isn't much of a problem, particularly if it's outdoors and in a place that it doesn't matter if it should drip a little bit, but that will take care of that. I'm going to attach it using the floral wire. This is the number 16 gauge because I do have a heavy piece of fruit here and I want to make certain that it is attached securely. I'm also going to use a few picks as I make this decoration. The picks that I'm using are floral picks. They have wires on the end of them, and they come in several different lengths. I have 2 lengths on the table right now, and then I also have a long stick called a bulb stick or a hyacinth stake that can be broken into different size pieces to use to hold my fruit. I think the pineapple should be ready now to attach, and I want to place it up against the cage, maybe with just a little bit of that top hanging over the edge there so that it can catch. I'm going to, as I said, do 2 things here. I'm going to take one of the floral picks, the wires come off of it, and impale it into the pineapple, maybe make it just a little shorter so that I've got a means of securing the pineapple into the foam to begin with. Remember, these grids that are on the cage, they're a big help in holding fruit on, and you'll see that also help hold some of the foliages that will go into this. So that's just a starting point there to get the pineapple secured. Maybe I'll have it just a little bit of an angle here, make it a little more swanky. The wire will go through the pineapple as it would in any fruit from one side through to the other. Now, I don't need too much wire right there because the main purpose in using this wire is to push it through the cage, and let's see where it's going to come out. There we go. It usually works the first time if it's going to work. And I find it's best not to keep poking and tearing things up. The wire, because it is fairly stiff and because I want to make certain that it does hold this pineapple, needs to be twisted with the pliers. Let's see, let's catch it a little bit better there. There. Now, I think that's very secure. It's not going anyplace. Again, poke those pieces of wire back into the frame. If for some reason you have an unusually heavy pineapple or you feel that it still needs a little more support, you could poke a few pieces of the floral picks beneath it here just to hold it and seat it a little bit. But I feel like that's quite well settled. Now I can have the fun of adding the foliages to it. The foliage I want to use today is quite varied. I like to use foliages that are evergreen and needled both together. One of the first ones I'm going to use is one that goes by the name of ruscus. And Italian ruscus is its preferred name when you're purchasing it through commercial sources. The next one is flat cedar or leyland cedar. It's leyland cypress is another name for it, that makes a nice long-lasting green. Of course, we can't do without boxwood. And then another foliage I'll plan to use in this is deodara cedar. So you probably can get lots of ideas of plants that are in your yard or in your area that could be pruned at this time of year and add it to your decorations. Anytime I use foliages, I want to leave enough stem that I can poke it in a good distance into the foam so that it gets plenty of moisture. And I can, as I said, make this into sort of a vertical swag where the greens will extend quite a distance. You can get a lot of mileage out of this container. And this could be placed on a door, might go on a gate, and of course, as I've mentioned, a lamp post. The ruscus is evergreen all year, and it's very graceful, lasts quite a long time, it's easy to work with, adds a nice look at Christmas. And if you have a nice long piece, as I just did, you can cut it into all sorts of little pieces. Even the segments of the leaves can come off and be used closer into the decoration. This is very easy to cover using these materials. The cedar, the flat cedar, gives a graceful look to it, as well as the deodara cedar. You maybe would have a lot of juniper that needs to be trimmed and could be added to your decoration. There. Okay. That gives you an idea quickly of how the materials start going into it, and then you fill in all the different sides. We can switch now to one that has more fruit on it and is filled in with its greens and put in the final touches. This one has the pineapple already on it, as well as two miniature pineapples, orange, lady apple, and it has a pear tucked up here in the top. I don't usually put pears on my decorations. They don't last as long as some other fruits do. But in a decoration like this, where most of the fruit has been impaled on sticks, such as the floral pick or a piece of the hyacinth stake, they're easy to take back out and can be replaced if necessary. Since I had the pear toward the top of this decoration, it made me want to put a little bit more green fruit in. However, the pear is very heavy, and pointing it downwards, I might have more chance of it slipping out, particularly as it ripens and gets softer. So I thought I'd add the lime down here at the bottom to pick up the color, give a little bit more variety of material, and then we can keep adding a little bit more foliage to this now that I see where all the key pieces of fruit are going to be. Some of the greens that I like to use are herbs. And of course, rosemary is one that I think we all associate with Christmas. And rosemary smells great. You might not see all of these materials when you see the decoration from a distance, but it's such fun to come up a little closer to it and be able to smell the nice fragrances of herbs and see more textures. Also, I think the grayish green of the rosemary helps pick up the gray on the pineapple. So a few pieces of those will add a little bit more interest. Perhaps if you have an herb garden and you still have some sage around at Christmas time, that would be another nice texture to add. We use at Colonial Williamsburg a great deal of a tree called red cedar, even though it has lots of blue berries. The red cedar is a native tree here, and even just one piece of that might be a nice addition with the gray-green of the pineapples. The other fruit I want to add will be some kumquats, and that's because I have this one orange in the decoration, and it's kind of lonesome by itself. So let's get some good-looking kumquats to add to this decoration. Several ways I might do this. Since these are large, I'm going to use the floral picks, just the pointed end of some small ones, and insert that into the base of the kumquat. If these were smaller, I might use a floral wire, though I do find, and you might be interested in this depending on where you live, that the floral wire gets very cold, colder than a wooden pick, and sometimes that causes the fruit to go bad faster if it's frozen and it's outside and it should freeze than if you have the wooden pick in the kumquat. We find that probably the hardest thing on using fresh fruit is the change in temperature. If it goes down below freezing, then rises into the 50s or 60s during the day, that can be very hard on the longevity of the fruit. Otherwise, most of the fruit that you'll see me using can last up to 14 days. That's probably enough of the kumquats to pick up a little bit more of the color of the orange. And then to lighten it up a little bit more, I'm going to place a few pieces of variegated holly. Variegated holly is not usually associated with the colonial decorations, and that's because it really wasn't very available during the 1700s. There are very few references to it, and usually just by some of the better-known plantsmen of the time. So it would be something to use sparingly if you were doing a strictly colonial decoration, but it sure gives a spark to the other greens, and most of us aren't trying to be totally authentic to the period. I want to continue adding color to this swag, and the best way to do that now, especially in order to get color at all ends of it, is to add holly berries. That's one of my favorite brightener-uppers. The holly berries I'm going to be using are deciduous hollies, and of course their leaves fell off just before Christmas, just in time to be used as decorations. Another way to obtain the holly berries you might need is to use a branch of regular evergreen holly, but trim the foliage off and expose the berries more that way. Very quickly you can see how that will liven up a decoration by removing those leaves, and the berries are fully exposed that way. So I could use the stem just bare like that and begin tucking it into the foam that's in this cage with the swag, or I could use my deciduous hollies and poke them in the same way. The stems are nice and long on the deciduous holly, so they can find their way quite a ways out into the swag. And other ways of adding color might be with pepper that you've grown in your garden during the summer. Maybe you have roses. The species roses have rose hips, which are the seed pods on the roses, and they can give you a lot of color. So as you look around your garden and the roadsides, you'll see lots of materials that will brighten up your decorations at Christmas time. Let's add just a couple over here. And then one other fruit that I want to add, or berry, is one that's really known probably more in the South, but it might give you some ideas no matter where you live about adding a berry to your decoration and a way to do it. These are China berries. And as I said, they're known in the South. They grow on a very weedy sort of tree. Not very attractive, are they, when they're like that? But if I clip the little branches off that have the fruit on them and then bundle them up and use them in these clumps, they will show up very well. And I'll again use the floral picks to gather these together in just a clump. Put that pick up against the group of berries and wrap it around the stem several times, and then come back just a little ways below that so that they stay in a clump. Then those can be another dimension to this decoration. And I find that it's all these different textures, the different sizes of fruits and berries, the different colors that make it such a, sort of a wealth of what might have come out of your garden or the collection of things that you may have purchased also at the grocery store. But it looks very festive and bright when you've added these different materials together to make a welcoming swag like this that could go on your Christmas doorway.
To make this beautiful swag, use the following materials: 1 large floral cage, 1 pineapple, Italian ruscus, flat cedar, boxwood, deodara cedar, 2 miniature pineapples, 1 orange, 1 pear, 1 lime, rosemary, red cedar, kumquats, variegated holly, holly berries, china berries, and number 16 gauge floral wire, floral picks in assorted sizes, and a few bulb stakes. Making a topiary form is easy, and best of all, it lasts for years. First, cut a stick that gives you the desired height for the location and outer container. Buy some plaster of Paris at the hardware store and mix it with water right in the container that will hold your stick. A small plastic flower pot will do. Cover the holes with tape. Make sure the mixture of plaster of Paris is quite high and thick. Place your stick in the pot and be sure the stick is vertical. For a more unusual look, choose a stick wrapped in vines or one that's curved or covered with lichens.
Well, let's show how we get started on one. We'll have the example here. We'll just put it into a pot. You can choose any kind of a pot. The reason that we're doing it in a small container to start with is that this way we have the freedom to use perhaps a basket one time or a very ornate porcelain container another time, or an ordinary little flower pot. And we'll just weight it down with some stones. Just pour those right in and smooth them around. And this way it holds your container very firmly. And then we can cover that up with some Spanish moss or some green moss later on. Or we'll do it right now just to show you how that looks. Now, what I would recommend is taking your floral foam, and we'll trim off the edges here so that we have, doesn't have to be exact at all, it just makes it a little bit easier. And then take your floral foam, here's one where I've completed it, and soak it in a mixture of floral preservative and water, and then put it right on top of the center of your stick here. You just impale it, just push down gently until you feel it's very secure. Now, because you've got stones in the bottom, you can work on this very easily. We're going to start with some boxwood, and make sure that your boxwood is well conditioned. You might pick it in large bunches like this and then peel off all of your bottom leaves, and then first you can submerge it in water overnight, and then break off small little pieces about like this. Now what I'm going to do first is show you how, by just quickly encircling this, you're going to find that it just automatically becomes round. So we'll just tuck in some of these little pieces around in a circle. And this is just very automatic. There's nothing difficult about it. You can make sure that you do some on the bottom as well. And just go right around. And you notice I'm not really keeping track. I just know that they're all vaguely the same length. And you'll be surprised how quickly If it's a little bit too long, you can just snip that off with your fingers. And then as we come around, I'm just going to tip this a little bit so that you'll see how very quickly it's forming a circular shape. And you would just do that in all directions. And so if you keep these little, just have a whole pile of these small little sprigs, about 3 inches long, 3 to 4 inches long. And then if you have a whole pile of those, you can do this very quickly. And I'm going to move this and bring over one which is a little bit further along. And you notice I've left the back open, but the front is all covered. And I think if we can quickly put in some of these sprigs, and you'll see how quickly it can be done here. And we'll cover the top of this, and you'll get that rounded effect. And then we'll put in some flowers. These forms are really wonderful. If you do condition your greens well, they'll last, 6 or 8 weeks. And I'll tell you a little bit about how you would water them later, because it is the floral foam, which holds a tremendous amount of water. Your flowers will have to be changed in that time period, but basically whatever your base is, and you could use any number of different plant materials for your base. You could use white pine, for instance, to give a very lacy effect. You could use all pine cones. You could use dried materials. I have a large rosemary bush. You could make it out of rosemary and other herbs. It's wonderful to do an herbal one. If you do that very tightly, when it dries, you've got a wonderful dried herbal topiary as well. So this gives you the rough form, and you would keep working on that as you went along. But let's talk about some of the plant material that you can put in. I have some lovely champagne roses today, and we're going to start with those. And these, whenever you get anything from the florist, just always give a fresh cut on an angle and strip off all of the lower leaves. Now for this particular topiary, I'm going to cut the stem short, and then I'm going to cut off this rose here, and I'm going to just put it right into the foam. And I'll put in another one. It's best when you're doing this to kind of keep an eye, just keep turning it as you go around. Try not to have a line going or a pattern of any sort. You really want this to look as if it's a random arrangement of your flowers. And it's best to start with your largest flowers first. So we'll just do a few of these to give you the idea. Now you have a choice. I have some Bouvardia here, which it's a much taller plant when you get it, and it's basically a florist plant, but the foliage is not good. It does not last. So you want to remove all of that. It will turn brown and won't be in addition to your arrangement. And then cut out the center part, and you can tuck that in. Just put it in rather firmly. Now some of these side pieces on the Bouvardia can be used as well to give an interesting little change of texture too. I always remember to try and have a variety of different textures because it makes it a lot more interesting. Now we'll put a couple more of these pieces in. And again, keep an eye toward moving those around into different, so that we don't have much repetition of any kind of a pattern there. They can face different directions, for instance. You want to make sure that you're adding a roses around the bottom as well. Okay, then you can decide, for instance, at this point you've got two nice textures and slightly different colors. And you might want to do something with the little Monte Cassino daisies. You might like that look, which is very pretty. It's a whole different texture and certainly color. Or perhaps I have some beautiful white heather, and this would be very nice done to give that sort of spiky look. Let's try adding some of that. And you're just, again, trying to do a nice random arrangement with the heather. And you can really just break this off, and then you pull off the bottom things. And again, I have, after I received this, I recut the stems and put them in water with some floral preservative. That always adds to your length of your particular arrangement. So now we're getting this look of a little bit of the spiky look, which is nice. Gives some good variety. Even though we haven't done too many flowers, I'm also going to take some pieces of the poet's laurel or the Alexandrian laurel. It goes by a variety of different names, but I'm going to cut some of these side pieces off. And I'm going to trim off the lower leaves so that only 2 or 3 leaves are remaining. And I'm going to put this, just tuck some of these in. I have a few that are all prepared. I think you will see that this just kind of gives, it's a nice shiny green foliage, and it gives nice added dimension and outline. Again, I remember a number of years ago we had a wonderful lady here in Williamsburg from England, and she always said that it was important to leave room for the butterflies in your arrangement. So keep that in mind no matter what type of arrangement you're doing. Let's look at one that's a little bit further along. Put this. And you can see that we've gone around the edge with some of this Alexandrian laurel. This is a wonderful plant if you're in a zone that can grow it. It's not particularly common, but florists call it Italian ruscus. It has been reclassified, and its Latin name is Danii rusmosa, and it might be something that you could get at your local plant supply place, some sort of a greenhouse or any of your chains. We do have it locally in this area, but it makes a wonderful plant. It comes up in the spring, looks like asparagus, and then forms these wonderful long pieces. For instance, here's an example of the length of a common piece of it, and it's really a delightful plant material to use. And here you see the roses and the Bouvardia and the white heather are contributing to slightly different color variations. The textures are different, and yet it gives a wonderful combination of colors, I think, as a whole. When you go to water it, just put a towel around the base, carry it over to the sink, and just water it with a watering can, just as you would water any kind of a floral arrangement. And when the water drips out at the bottom, then you know you've probably watered enough. Another thing that will extend the life is just spraying it with one of these little tiny mister that you can get. This will extend the life of your floral arrangement. Most of your plants will like that anyway. So it's a delightful arrangement to make. As I said, the form will last perhaps 10 years or so. And if you have them in pairs, available to do in pairs, or you could even think of doing maybe 4 little ones down the center of a table. Endless opportunities for doing with fresh plant material or dried plant material. But it's certainly one of our favorite ones here.
Faux topiaries are easy to make and look great in pairs. 1 cut stick pointed at the top, plaster of Paris, small plastic container, 1 ornamental pot, 1/3 to 1/2 block of floral foam, boxwood, champagne roses, Bavardia, white heather, and Alexandrian laurel. Pine roping adds a soft and elegant look to any home or decoration. To create a full look, double your roping so the branches turn up and down when it's hung. Simply stretch out your roping, double it back until the ends meet, and twist it around itself. Secure it at the ends and it's ready to hang. Attach the roping by driving small nails into your molding or railing about 18 inches apart. Wrap 20-gauge wire around the roping and twist it securely on the nail. Cut off the excess wire and tuck the pine needles around the wire and nail to hide the mechanics. Using these tricks will help secure the roping and also keep it soft and full even as it dries out. What better way to enhance a colorful apple fan you can make yourself?
The design for the apple fan is based on the colonial love of balance and symmetry. It's also based on a great many apples. 30 apples go into the decoration, but it's very simple to make as long as you have the right form for doing it. The form is made to go over a transom or doorway, and it's a wooden form that is in the shape of a half circle or an arch. This form is very sturdy because it has to hold a good bit of weight, and it also is filled with finishing nails. These finishing nails go in very distinct rows of 7, 5, and 3. And then there's a center row of nails that will hold pineapple later. While I'm holding this, I'll show you that it also has eye hooks. And these eye hooks are what hold it in place when it does get hung. Now, to show you a little bit more about how this is made, I will demonstrate the placement of greens first that go on this form. We depend on magnolia leaves to cover the outside edge of the form, and these magnolia leaves are first soaked, just the stem ends, that's all that has to go in water, maybe overnight or at least several hours, so that they will hold up a long time. And I trim those little bit of stem off to eliminate the bulk of it. Then I begin arranging these leaves along the outside of the form just to make sure I've got enough of them, that they are all about the same size and shape, fairly flat, and that they'll go all the way to the edge before I begin attaching them. I'll do this on both sides of the form. Then using a staple gun, I'll place the magnolia leaves securely on here. I'm going to use, there's a little hook right here at the top that's going to be used later to help hold pineapple in place. I'm going to use that as my starting point, and that gives me a center right there. The staple gun just needs to put a single staple in there to hold it, and then by overlapping each of the leaves, I can place them all the way down the edge here, about an inch in from the edge of the board. Let me do one more. I won't finish placing all the leaves, but you can see that that would be an important step to have that done first. Then to continue covering the wood so it doesn't show through, I'm going to use little bits of boxwood, just almost flat pieces that aren't very woody, because I want to be able to catch them with the staple gun. Again, remember that the pineapple is going to be here, so I don't need to cover that too much. I want to bring the boxwood up just a little bit over the edge of the magnolia, where I'll cover the staples that are already there, and catch the stem. Maybe I can get a couple of them together. And so the same process will continue as this whole board is covered with little bits of boxwood until maybe down right at the bottom I might turn those going the opposite direction so that they'll make a little bit of a fringe along the edge. Once I have this covered, envision that covered, I will place my pineapple on the nails. It may seem a little difficult to imagine that this pineapple will stay in place, but it will. It is sometimes hard to find one that's not too heavy. This one's a nice size, but it's not too big for this. So there are 3 nails there, one here and one here, to help hold the fruit. And then remember that there's a little screw eye here I'm going to use. So I first look to make sure I'm getting the best side of this. The back might not be quite as pretty, but you won't see that. And I do want to leave it intact. It helps give a little bit more dimension to the decoration. The very thin florist wire is then inserted into the little screw eye that's in the back there. And the purpose of this is that top, even though it isn't heavy, can pull away. So I'm going to wrap this in among the foliage so that it won't be seen, and twist it a little bit. I could trim that off or just tuck it down into the foliage a little bit more. You see, that's very secure. It'll stay in place even when it gets hung up over the door, and this whole decoration will probably last close to 3 weeks if it's in a fairly sheltered place, which most doorways are. The placement of the apples can take a lot of different directions. You could use all the same color of apples. You could use different colored apples. I've seen designs where people even put oranges or lemons on here. You might even rearrange the nails if you have a different design in mind. The way of doing this is to use the core to help hold the apple on. And don't change your mind. Just place it right on there, and it will go into the core. Again, it'll stay in place and not wobble at all. But if you decide you don't like it like that and start making more changes, it gets soft and it might start falling off. We've got magnolia leaves all along here and boxwood, and we'll continue from that stage with the rest of the apples. Now, this is a form. As you can tell, it's gotten quite heavy at this point. It has been done up to this point with both red apples and green apples. I still have 2 nails here to add a couple more apples so we can finish the design off that way. But you can see how beautiful it is with these bright green leaves, very polished apples, all very precisely laid out. So let's see if we can slide these right in here. There goes one, and there's our last one. It takes a bit of time, as you can see, to gather the right size apples to make this work out. You notice right here next to the pineapple, there's a little bit more space. These apples are larger, and then it works down to smaller ones. The design makes a nice design no matter which way you look at it. And of course, that's the key to making it beautiful, is to make it symmetrical. And then it needs no attention if you have taken the time to select very firm, hard Red Delicious apples, or the Granny Smith apples in this case, that will last for most of your Christmas season.
To create an apple fan like this one, use the following: 1 pineapple, a nail-studded fan form, approximately 30 medium magnolia leaves, boxwood, 10 Granny Smith apples, 20 Red Delicious apples, a staple gun, and number 22 gauge florist wire. There are so many wonderful decorations you can create in the Williamsburg style. Experiment with different plant materials, new types of forms, and accessories available to you. Try something new. Creating Christmas decorations from Williamsburg takes only a little time. An eye for balance and symmetry, and a variety of natural materials to add color and texture. Whether traditional or contemporary, your only limit to recreating a Williamsburg Christmas in your home is your imagination.
To order additional copies of this tape or the books Christmas Decorations from Williamsburg and Colonial Williamsburg Decorates for Christmas, or for order information on other fine products from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation catalog, call toll-free 1-800-446-9240.